Marginal note, transfer of stocks, etc. 107. All stocks, cash, bankers' balances, and securities for money belonging to each province at the time of the Union, except as in this Act mentioned, shall be the property of Canada and shall be taken in reduction of the amount of the respective debts of the provinces at the Union. Marginal note, transfer of property in Schedule 108. The public works and property of each province, enumerated in the third schedule to this Act, shall be the property of Canada. Marginal note, property in lands, mines, etc. 109. All lands, mines, minerals, and royalties belonging to the several provinces of Canada, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick at the Union, and all sums then due or payable for such lands, mines, minerals, or royalties, shall belong to the several provinces of Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick, in which the same are situate or arise, subject to any trusts existing in respect thereof, and to any interest other than that of the province in the same. And note 57. Marginal note, assets connected with provincial debts, 110. All assets connected with such portions of the public debt of each province as are assumed by that province shall belong to that province. Marginal note, Canada to be liable for provincial debts, 111. Canada shall be liable for the debts and liabilities of each province existing at the Union. Marginal note, debts of Ontario and Quebec, 112. Ontario and Quebec conjointly shall be liable to Canada for the amount, if any, by which the debt of the province of Canada exceeds at the Union $62,500,000, and shall be charged with interest at the rate of 5% per annum thereon. Marginal note, assets of Ontario and Quebec, 113. The assets enumerated in the fourth schedule to this Act belonging, at the Union, to the province of Canada shall be the property of Ontario and Quebec conjointly. Marginal note, debt of Nova Scotia, 114. Nova Scotia shall be liable to Canada for the amount, if any, by which its public debt exceeds at the Union $8 million, and shall be charged with interest at the rate of 5% per annum thereon. And note 58. Marginal note, debt of New Brunswick, 115. New Brunswick shall be liable to Canada for the amount, if any, by which its public debt exceeds at the Union $7 million, and shall be charged with interest at the rate of 5% per annum thereon. Marginal note, payment of interest to Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, 116. In case the public debts of Nova Scotia and New Brunswick do not at the Union amount to $8 million and $7 million respectively, they shall respectively receive by half-yearly payments in advance from the Government of Canada interest at 5% per annum on the difference between the actual amounts of their respective debts and such stipulated amounts. Marginal note, provincial public property, 117. The several provinces shall retain all their respective public property not otherwise disposed of in this Act, subject to the right of Canada to assume any lands or public property required for fortifications or for the defense of the country. 118. Repealed. And note 59. Marginal note, further grant to New Brunswick, 119. New Brunswick shall receive by half-yearly payments in advance from Canada for the period of 10 years from the Union an additional allowance of $63,000 per annum, but as long as the public debt of that province remains under $7 million, a deduction equal to the interest at 5% per annum on such deficiency shall be made from that allowance of $63,000. And note 60. Marginal note, form of payments, 120. All payments to be made under this Act, or in discharge of liabilities created under any Act of the provinces of Canada, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick respectively, and assumed by Canada, shall, until the Parliament of Canada otherwise directs, be made in such form and manner as may from time to time be ordered by the Governor-General in Council. Marginal note, Canadian manufactures, etc. 121. All articles of the growth, produce, or manufacture of any one of the provinces shall, from and after the Union, be admitted free into each of the other provinces. Marginal note, continuance of customs and excise laws, 122. The customs and excise laws of each province shall, subject to the provisions of this Act, continue in force until altered by the Parliament of Canada. And note 61. Marginal note, exportation and importation, as between two provinces, 123. where customs duties are, at the Union, leviable on any goods, wares, or merchandises, in any two provinces. Those goods, wares, and merchandises may, from and after the Union, be imported from one of those provinces into the other of them on proof of payment of the customs duty leviable thereon in the province of exportation, and on payment of such further amount, if any, of customs duty, as is leviable thereon in the province of importation. And note 62, marginal note, lumber dues in New Brunswick, 124. Nothing in this act shall affect the right of New Brunswick to levy the lumber dues provided in Chapter 15 of Title 3 of the Revised Statutes of New Brunswick, or in any act amending that act before or after the Union, and not increasing the amount of such dues, but the lumber of any of the provinces other than New Brunswick shall not be subject to such dues. And note 63, marginal note, exemption of public lands, etc., 125. No lands or property belonging to Canada or any province shall be liable to taxation. Marginal note, Provincial Consolidated Revenue Fund, 126. Such portions of the duties and revenues over which the respective legislatures of Canada, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick had before the Union power of appropriation as are by this Act reserved to the respective governments or legislatures of the provinces, and all duties and revenues raised by them in accordance with the special powers conferred upon them by this Act, shall in each province form one consolidated revenue fund, to be appropriated for the public service of the province. 9. Miscellaneous provisions. General, 127. Repealed. And note 64. Marginal note, oath of allegiance, etc., 128. Every member of the Senate or House of Commons of Canada shall before taking his seat therein take and subscribe before the Governor-General, or some person authorized by him, and every member of a legislative council or legislative assembly of any province shall before taking his seat therein take and subscribe before the Lieutenant Governor of the province, or some person authorized by him, the oath of allegiance contained in the 5th Schedule to this Act. And every member of the Senate of Canada and every member of the Legislative Council of Quebec shall also, before taking his seat therein, take and subscribe before the Governor-General, or some person authorized by him, the declaration of qualification contained in the same schedule. Marginal note, continuance of existing laws, courts, officers, etc., 129. Except as otherwise provided by this Act, all laws in force in Canada, Nova Scotia, or New Brunswick, at the Union, and all courts of civil and criminal jurisdiction, and all legal commissions, powers, and authorities, and all officers, judicial, administrative, and ministerial, existing therein at the Union, shall continue in Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick respectively, as if the Union had not been made. Subject nevertheless, except with respect to such as are enacted by or exist under acts of the Parliament of Great Britain or of the Parliament of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, to be repealed, abolished, or altered by the Parliament of Canada or by the legislature of the respective province according to the authority of the Parliament or of that legislature under this Act. And note 65, marginal note, transfer of officers to Canada, 130. Until the Parliament of Canada otherwise provides, all officers of the several provinces having duties to discharge in relation to matters other than those coming within the classes of subjects by this Act assigned exclusively to the legislatures of the provinces shall be officers of Canada and shall continue to discharge the duties of their respective offices under the same liabilities, responsibilities, and penalties as if the Union had not been made. And note 66. Marginal note, appointment of new officers, 131. Until the Parliament of Canada otherwise provides, the Governor-General and Council may from time to time appoint such officers as the Governor-General and Council deems necessary or proper for the effectual execution of this Act. Marginal note, treaty obligations, 132. The Parliament and Government of Canada shall have all powers necessary or proper for performing the obligations of Canada or of any province thereof as part of the British Empire towards foreign countries, arising under treaties between the Empire and such foreign countries. Marginal note, use of English and French languages, 133. Either the English or the French language may be used by any person in the debates of the Houses of the Parliament of Canada and of the Houses of the Legislature of Quebec, and both those languages shall be used in the respective records and journals of those houses, and either of those languages may be used by any person, or in any pleading or process, in or issuing from any court of Canada established under this Act, and in or from all or any of the courts of Quebec,